Welcome to another episode of the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm Kevin. Due to scheduling conflicts, things like that, nobody else can make it this week. So Andrew will be back next week, and we'll talk about Ahsoka then. We definitely want to get into that, but I definitely wanted to have somebody to bounce off of with that one because it's such a, it's a bigger show. People are interested in that and talking about that. So I wanted to have more of a dialogue when we have that conversation. So I'll wait on that. But because we had conflicts last week, also, I didn't record, and that's why I want to record this week. And I have a boatload of stuff that I've watched because it's been 2 weeks. Most of it's been horror, which is kind of cool because it's October. We're in spooky season and all that jazz. So watched a lot of horror, a handful of classics actually, which is really cool. So I'm definitely going to get into those. I think I will start off with something that's not horror, the only thing on the list that's not horror, but I really enjoyed it. So me and my kids sat down this week and started to watch One Piece. I've never seen the anime, never don't know anything about it, have no idea. It looked like a kid's show to me. So we sat down and watched together, me and my youngest and my oldest, and it was not what I was expecting. It definitely has like this young, childish energy feel to it, and it's really good. But there's this underlying adultness to it also. Like one of the opening scenes, somebody's mouthing off to this big pirate lady, and she literally mashes a dude's brain into the deck of the ship. So it doesn't actually show that particular action, but a shot later, you see the brains being mopped up off the deck, right? So there's this weird juxtaposition of adult and child content, and so it's really interesting. It's really neat. But the show itself is a whole lot of fun. It's rated really high on Rotten Tomatoes right now, with an 85% from the critics, 95% from the audience. So, like I said before, I kind of balanced that in the middle around a 90. And I agree with that. There's a lot of episodes that are rated really highly on IMDb, some as high as 9.1, which is really crazy. It really indicates that it's really popular. The last episode was really a good final episode. I hope it's getting a season 2. I can't remember if it is or not, but if it's not, it should. The main lead actor he's kind of adorable. Like he's just got this really, really idyllic, childlike personality, and he's super lovable. So all these people that are trying to not love him do a great job. So the gist of the show, I should probably explain that, is that there's this young man, and all he wants to do is be a pirate. Not just pirate, but king of the pirates. And to do that, he's looking for this old piece of pirate treasure called the One Piece. And once you have that, you are, I don't know, king of the pirates. So he sets off on this adventure, and we meet him in the very beginning. He's being rescued by the large pirate I was talking about in the beginning. And so he rescues someone from that particular pirate, and they become friends. And then it's just kind of how it builds. Me and my kids actually watched a couple episodes of the anime after starting the show, but the gist of it is that he starts to gather a crew of people that are not intending to be part of a crew. He just kind of like that your ragtag bunch of folks coming together as pirates. They don't even have a ship yet, so that there's a whole storyline about them getting a ship and all that. And it's so much fun. I was so disappointed when it was over because it went so fast. That I really need a second season. I think it was, like I said, just a whole lot of fun. The cast is, I didn't know what I was comparing to, but so for me, the cast was perfect. I don't know if people that watch the anime love or hate the cast. I'm really curious if anybody watching is a fan of the anime and thinks that it's good or bad. I'd be curious to see what the take is, but from what I saw, knowing nothing, I thought it was really fantastic. So yeah, I'd say honestly, even if you don't have kids, go check it out. It was a lot of fun. It kind of from the like the fun level of it. Kind of reminds me of something like Twisted Metal, which I really enjoyed. That one was a lot of fun too. So if you're just looking for a good time, I mean, I would definitely call it a feel good show. It's not so adult that you can't enjoy it, and I don't think it's so adult that you can't see it with your kids. There's a couple of bad words in there. Like I said, there's a little bit of violence, but nothing crazy, like too over the top. So I think it's an okay thing to watch. So with the kids, sorry. So definitely give it a go if you haven't. I think it is probably my favorite thing that I've watched in the last little bit. And that's saying something. Even in this week, I watched some really fun stuff, but our last 2 weeks. But this is good. So check out One Piece. It's a lot of fun. So one thing that I did this week, now starting to roll into the horror, is I got into a bunch of older horror stuff that I hadn't seen in or hadn't seen in a while or had never seen. One of the big ones that I take a lot of shit for, and I've always said that it just kind of bored me and I wasn't into it, was The Exorcist. And looking back and watching it this week, I laughed with the crew in the chat because when I watched The Exorcist for the first time, it was to spend time with a girl, and clearly we spent quality time together because I didn't see any of that movie. Watching it this week, I realized that it's a fantastic movie, and there was so much of it that I hadn't seen that I didn't remember. So it was really great to sit down and watch it. I think maybe it's watching A24 horror films that kind of set me up for that slower pace, but the A24 stuff is big on building suspense over time, making you understand the characters and the things that they're going through so that you can understand the story. And I think it's Friedkin, the director, does a great job building these characters as a family and forcing you, or not forcing you, but allowing you to see them as human beings before you start getting into the horror aspect of the exorcism, which I can see, especially at the time, would have been exceptionally scary. I think the possession and the horror film genre at the time was really, really solid. I think I talked about Rosemary's Baby last time, but these films do a great job of just slowly setting things up and really getting you going. And I did not realize it's what The Exorcist was, and so it was really cool to me to watch it this time, especially with, like I said, a finer respect for slower storytelling, especially in horror films, because there's so many slasher films that are fast paced, and it seems like you're missing part of the story. I think I've always heard about how it's such a well-made movie and all that, and Linda Blair was okay. Dude, Linda Blair was amazing. Whatever they did as directors and producers and everybody to get her ready for that role, and to see her work as a child actor is actually super impressive, because she's really good as the young child actor. I think she was 14 when it was filmed, and like I said, she's really good. She plays a kid really well. She's really sweet. You like her a lot and all that. And when she starts to get possessed, yes, there's other people doing the voices. She's obviously not doing the voice work, but the expression that she brings to it, even though it's not her voice, and them lining up the voice with her movement of her mouth, they do such a good job with their ADR work, and it just works, man. It's a great horror film. I was really stoked that it was so much better than I remembered. And I mean, cheers to me before for getting with a girl or whatever. But I'm glad I saw it this time. It was really, really cool. So if you haven't seen The Exorcist, or if it's been a long time, or if you didn't appreciate it the first time, I'd say go check it out. It's awesome. I think it's streaming over on Max right now. So if you want to check it out, and you have HBO or HBO Max or whatever they're calling it right now, it's easy to go and find. I know The Exorcist Believer dropped this weekend. I won't be going to see it in the theater myself, but it is also just getting hammered by the critics. So I'm not sure that it's worth spending the time to go see. I think that is up to anybody to do their research and go see. If you're really into horror movies, it's one of the big ones in the theater right now. There's a lot of talk about how there was a big gamble. They put, I want to say, $300 million into this movie on some level, and it's not doing well. And Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, um, was not impressed. Like he's not excited about them making this sequel. So I may actually go back and watch the original sequels to The Exorcist. I've heard pretty decent things about two and three, that they're okay. So knowing what I saw in this one, I'm at least curious to see what the next story would be. So yeah, The Exorcist, go watch it on Max. It's the season for it, so go knock that out. The other thing that I watched was The Thing, to get into my my old school horror and horror films that I've missed. This is another big one that I always try to see, and I've struggled for so many months and years to find it on a streaming service because it seems to never be there. And The Thing, original 1982, is now streaming on Peacock. So if you've got Peacock, there's finally an opportunity to go watch it and not have to pay for it, which is my big thing. I mean, if you want to go buy it, having watched it, I would say it's totally worth it. The movie itself has a history behind the story, in that it was a novel, or a novella, so a shorter story. But back in I want to say the 20s or 30s or something like that, and then there's an original film in the 50s that they shot, I believe, in black and white, and that sort of there's parts of it that are kind of glossed over in The Thing, that I think, just even if you just, I'd say, watch this 1982 The Thing first, but then go read up on the 50s movie called The Thing from Another World, and just see what that kind of backstory is and some of the things that are left out, because I think it does add to the story. I don't think you need it to make the 1982 Thing any better, because it is really good, but the things that are in that story kind of set up some of the mysteries around this one. So them finding the station in the ice, or sorry, I guess the Polish is who was, but Norwegians. That's who it is. So the Norwegian outpost is explained a little better on what happened at the Norwegian outpost is kind of in the original, The Thing from Outer Space, or sorry, The Thing from Another World. But this one, what I think makes it really great is it's the same thing that kind of makes Alien great, in that it tells a great story in not as tight a space as Alien, because Alien is just in the ship, and even though there's large spaces in the ship, you're in tight quarters. The Thing, still a lot of it takes place in an underground base, and you have that, but there are scenes where they're outside, or they're in the helicopter, they're going to the other base, so there's a little more space in between. But the effects, because they're practical effects, they hold up really damn well. Like the special effects, there's some things that they did in there that were really, really impressive for the time, and to be fair, would be pretty solid now. I think the whole thing with the dogs, when it becomes the monster in front of everybody, it works, man. It's creepy. If you're watching that alone in the dark, that's some scary stuff. So I think it's really cool. I think one of the things that's really funny is that like literally in the movie opens up, and it's actually a dog running across the snow, and this helicopter is chasing this dog and shooting at it, and you don't know why. And the dog gets to the base where everybody is, and this helicopter lands and keeps trying to shoot it, even though the Americans are coming out of their base, and nobody can understand him because he's speaking Norwegian. And because he's shooting them and he ends up accidentally hitting one of the Americans, they kill the Norwegian before, they can have a conversation of any kind with him. And it turns out what he's saying is, he's basically saying that the dog is not a dog, it's a thing. He's trying to warn them that this thing is a monster, which they don't know when they let it in, and then the movie starts, right? Or the action starts in the movie. And it's a kind of a running thing. If one person there on that American base had spoke Norwegian and listened and understood, they'd have killed the dog thing in the beginning and there'd be no movie. So it's a lot of fun. But that aside, I think it's a really great movie. Kurt Russell is crazy young. Keith David, who is in everything all of a sudden in my world. Like in the last week, I've seen him in like 3 or 4 different things. So I forget kind of how awesome Keith David is and how much work he's done. But it's a really fantastic movie. Like I really recommend it. If you haven't seen The Thing or you've had a reason to wait, go check it out. It's on Peacock, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So next up, I got some recommendations on Hulu that Rose Red was out. And Rose Red was an early 2000s Stephen King, like 3-episode miniseries about a haunted house, and the house, I think, was probably loosely based on the Winchester Mystery House, if you've ever heard of that. Some of the story is similar to that. It's got a large cast. So names that were bigger, at the time in 2002. You've got Nancy Travis, Melanie Linsky's in there as a young girl. She's in The Last of Us. She's been in a few things. She's in Yellow Jackets. Julian Sands is in it. He's great. Emily Deschanel from Bones is in it. So I mean, there's a good handful of people in there, and they do a really great job. But it's it's not quite a typical haunted house movie in that they know that it's haunted, and their whole goal is going there to prove that it's haunted. And Nancy Travis's character, Dr. Reardon, has kind of brought these people together to investigate the house and kind of unlock the evil power of the house, because each one is a little bit different. So different people kind of have different psychic abilities, and so they're trying to unlock the house, and it's good. Like it's a solid TV miniseries horror show. Like there's nothing over the top about it. We're still talking about network television in the early 2000s, so it's not over the top. It's to be fair, it's not even as gory or as impressive as the It miniseries from way back in the 90s, but it works and it's really solid. So if you're looking for something definitely PG-ish, but it's got a good story and it's a little trippy, Red Rose is good. Rose Red is good. When I finished that, another one popped up that I've always meant to watch and not really looked for because I forget about it all the time, but Stephen King's Storm of the Century. And that one's cool because it is Stephen King's first screenplay that he wrote, and it definitely has that feel to it. But basically it's this town gets caught in a blizzard, and an evil dude comes to town and he wants to make a deal with them, and he's making bad shit happen for 3 nights, I think, before he finally offers up and asks for his deal, which I don't want to throw out there because it's kind of the running story in the show. He basically says, give me what I want and I'll leave. And so that is, like I said, the running bit in the show in the background is that's what he's saying, but he's making people kill each other, and he's just a bad dude. And that cast is also really solid. So you have Tim Daly, Colin Fiore, Jeffrey DeMunn, who you would recognize, but probably not by name. Deborah Ferrantino is recognizable if you've ever watched Eureka. A lot of the actors are more recognizable than big names. What I thought was interesting is that this one is not in letterbox format, like so the edges are blacked out because it is just, even though it's just 3 years older than Rose Red, it wasn't in HD, so it's definitely got a slightly older feel to it, even though it's only a couple of years older. But it was really good, and what I thought was really cool, having watched these, if you're a fan of Mike Flanagan and Midnight Mass and The Haunting of Hill House and all of those, I think you can see, and this is a guess because I've never seen him say this, but you can see the roots of Mike Flanagan's storytelling in these two movies, especially I think Storm of the Century. But there's a certain feel to these two miniseries that you can see throughout Mike Flanagan's work. And I know he's a Stephen King fan and he's worked with Stephen King. So I have to assume that these films have had an impact on him. But yeah, it was really solid. I liked it a lot. I liked Rose Red a lot, so it was cool to kind of go down memory lane. I don't think it's something that I would rewatch, whereas watching The Exorcist and watching The Thing, I would actually be more inclined to rewatch those. Sit down. I have the basically the book version of Storm of the Century, which is the actual script to the three shows. So I may sit down and rewatch that just with the script in hand, just to see how that looks up against the movie, which I think is really cool. But it it's otherwise just a cool, scary story. And to be fair, I think it is the better of the two, even though Rose Red has a certain feel to it. I think Storm of the Century is the better of the two films, even though it's older. So I'd say go give that a shot. One other thing that I watched that is more recent was a decent horror flick called As Above, So Below. It's got the guy that played Jonah from Superstore, and that is the closest thing to a name in this movie that I saw. Everybody else I was not familiar with. But this one is kind of cool. It's like a retelling of Dante's Inferno almost, in that this group is looking for, they're kind of after a treasure. They're after, if you've ever seen Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, a lot of the name drops here are the same. So they're looking for Nicholas Flamel when they're looking for the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, depending on, I can't remember which one they used in the movie, but that's what they're looking for. So this stone that would give you eternal life. And so they go down into the catacombs of France to find it. They get trapped down there. And then, much like Dante's Inferno, they have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And even though they don't necessarily call it out in the film, they're basically going into the depths of hell and then trying to crawl the way back out. And it's good. Like, it's a solid, suspenseful kind of, it's not quite found footage because they get out, but there's a lot of, body cam work and things like that. The tight spaces definitely make it a little scarier and a little more cramped, and give you the ick sometimes when people are stuck in tunnels and stuff. So if that creeps you out, then this is definitely going to get you. If it really freaks you out, like if you're not okay with the cramped spaces stuff, I would say don't watch it, because I know if you're truly claustrophobic, this might not be the thing for you. But otherwise, go give it a shot. It's recent. Like I said, I think I want to say like 2016, 2019, somewhere in there. I was laughing when I was talking about this movie with some people that are Superstore fans, and I said that my theory behind it is that Jonah is actually the character from As Above, So Below, and when he gets to the Cloud9 Superstore and applies for the job, he changes his name and assumes a fake life, and that's why he tries to be so kind and so vanilla, is because he just went through this huge horrific ordeal, and now he's trying to be just be happy. Obviously not true, but my own fun little mental fan theory there. So that was As Above, So Below. Let's see, another thing that I watched that I didn't love but didn't hate was on Amazon Prime, called Wilderness. Not The Wilderness, just Wilderness. And this one stars Jenna Coleman, who I'm not particularly familiar with, but I know I've seen her before. Oliver Jackson Cohen, who is from a couple of the Mike Flanagan movies, most notably The Haunting of Hill House, and then Ashley Benson of Spring Breakers and Pretty Little Liars fame. But the gist of this one is the husband has an affair, the wife finds out, and then it's sort of this trail of revenge and chaos. It reminds me a little bit of the series Inside Man, where it was David Tennant, and there was a series of just terrible decisions made that were so preposterous that it made the film really almost unbelievable and kind of horrible. This one is not that bad, but it's definitely like decisions are being made that are at least questionable, and the things that happen, dude, the longer the show goes, the worse the husband looks. Um, and so the initial one of the early episodes, she takes him out into the wilderness, and she gets her to the cliff edge, and she's genuinely thinking about pushing him off the edge of the cliff and making it look like an accident, when somebody shows up, and so that derails that idea. And then it's after that, it's her just dealing with the chaos of it, and it was solid, but not amazing. I would think, if you don't have anything else to watch, you can give it a shot. Watch at your own risk, I guess. I think mileage may vary for different people. If you've ever been in a relationship where somebody's been unfaithful, or if you've got friends that have been unfaithful in a relationship, it'll make you a little uncomfortable because some of the thinking and some of the things that are done in it, you're kind of watching, you're like, well, that makes a little sense. I can see why somebody would do that. So, it's a little more interesting, I think, than Inside Man, because I think a lot of the things that do happen in it feel at least potentially real. And there's a few things that are a little ridiculous, but it's just like I said, it's like Inside Man, where it's a series of bad decisions by a couple of people, and they have to deal with those decisions, and then it comes to an end. There's no need for a sequel, so I think if you watch it all at once, you'll be fine. It's only got 6 episodes, so I think you'll get through it pretty quick if you want to give it a shot. So it's a 6.4 on IMDb, which isn't great. It's a 67% from the critics and 61% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I mean, you're really looking at something that's right there in that 60, slash 6.4, out of 10 range. So I think that across the board kind of tells you what you're going to get. And it's fine. It's not amazing. It's not bad. I think everybody does a good job in their parts. It's okay. So following something similar that's not quite the same, but it involves a couple. It's called Watcher. And the idea behind this one is that this couple has moved to Romania, and the husband or boyfriend, I can't tell which he is, and I'm sure they said it in there and I missed it because I watch movies at night and I'm old. But they're a couple, and they're in Romania. He has a job there, she doesn't, and so he is off a lot, and she notices while he's gone one night that there's somebody across the way just in their window staring at her. And so as the story goes on, this starts to become more uncomfortable. She starts to feel like somebody's following her. She, ultimately feels like she knows who she's following, or is following her. And come to find out, there's a serial killer at the time in Romania. So she believes that this is the serial killer. And so it's, it's kind of that almost like Rear Window story, except it does get out of the house and follows things around a little more. I think it's not great, but it's not bad. It's definitely good suspense. I think Micah Monroe is the main character. She was in It Follows, if you've ever seen that, and she does a good job here. Like I like the work done. The movie is suspenseful. It does keep you guessing as to who is the bad guy and who's not. One thing that really drove me crazy about the movie, and I think it's sort of the point of the movie, is that the boyfriend, husband, the significant other is a total piece of shit. Like you get the feeling that he's nice to her and all that, but every time they go somewhere, he speaks fluent, or not fluent, but close to fluent Romanian. She speaks none. And they very oftentimes leave her out of the conversation. So like they go on a double dinner date and everybody's speaking in Romanian, and she's just left out of the conversation, and they only tell her part of what they're saying and only the things that they want her to know. And it's just, it's not abusive, it's not, anything like that. It's just crappy. Like he's just not a good significant other. Like if you're gonna bring somebody with you to another country and live your life together, you owe it to that person to either help them learn the language and at least not leave them out of every interaction that you're in, so they feel like a third wheel instead of somebody participating in the conversation. And it doesn't, like I said, doesn't make him the villain of the story in that regard. It just means that he's not a good dude. Like he could be better. So I would say give that one a watch. That's over on Hulu right now, and it's solid. It's solid. The suspense builds, like I said, the mystery behind it and who the bad guy is, and whether she's just losing her mind or not is kind of what makes this one interesting. Um, if you're still hanging in there, I'm coming to the end of my list here. There's been a lot. So I'm going to go through actually three more. I have one more couple show that I watched yesterday. It's a film, actually. It's called Fair Play. It's over on Netflix. It's starring the girl from Bridgerton from the first season, and then Alden Ehrenreich, most notably Han Solo in the Solo movie, which if you've ever watched this show, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't dislike him. He's a fine actor. In the things that I've seen him in, he just wasn't right for Han Solo, but that's a whole other conversation that has been had multiple times on this show. This one, it's an interesting one. I don't know that I liked it or disliked it. Like I'm still on the fence about it a lot, but the gist of it is they both work for the same financial firm, this financial analyst firm, and it's a highly successful firm, and they are keeping their relationship under wraps. You're not supposed to have a relationship when you work there. So they've been together for 2 years, which is crazy to me. It seems like they probably should have written a shorter time period in. But in the beginning, he, proposes to her in kind of a hilarious scene that involves blood in a very inappropriate way. But it's funny and it works, and it's cool, and kind of sets up their relationship like they're kind of wild about each other. And so like the next day they go to work, and that sets up the whole, we have to keep our relationship quiet thing. And she overhears something. And so she comes home that night and she tells him that she heard that he's going to get this promotion. And so they celebrate that night. They're talking about their new engagement, whether they should reveal their relationship to the work and just deal with it, or whatever. Or I guess the girl gets a call from somebody who's a higher up one night, and she goes to a bar to meet this person, and it's actually the boss, and he explains to her that he wants her to have the job, and there's no sexual favors traded here or anything. It's not that movie. Like the guy is the big boss, and he's not trading the job for sexual favors. He's just telling her he respects her work and wants to give her the job. So she comes home and effectively tells her fiance that she was mistaken. He's not getting the job, she is. And so the rest of the movie is this whole tension and de-evolution of their relationship over just the tension of her having a job and him not, and her becoming more important, him now being a subordinate. They can't come out and talk about it, and it's a solid psychological breakdown thriller. It definitely kind of turns into I don't want to say a men are bad film, because I don't think that's right, but it definitely has a, for better or worse, a feminist bent to it. And the director says as much. And the way that it ends definitely is, you can take it a couple of ways, and I don't want to give it away because it would give away the ending. But I don't, it's not meant to man bash, and it's not meant to say that women aren't faultless either, but there's definitely a take to it. And so, watch it knowing that. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't really, it's not entirely that they're like all men are bad. It's more about, kind of women taking charge of their situation. But there's a few things that happen through it that, you're watching it, and it's not like the other ones where the series of events are bad decisions that nobody would make. Like at least this de-evolution and the thing this couple goes through feels like you could see it happening. Maybe it's a little more over the top, like though the unrealistic thing is like how long they stick it out, because you start to get the feel as it goes on that they just kind of hate each other. So why are they coming home to each other? Why are they, not being honest with each other, talking to each other? So that's kind of where the questions come in. So this is it's a 6.7 on IMDb. It's a 87% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but only a 56% from the audience. And I think that's kind of telling, because I think the themes that it's trying to tell you about are what the critics are grabbing onto, and the things that kind of don't work, and the things that are poor decisions, and why did you hang on, and those things I think are a little bit more from the audience side. So I think it straddles that, and so I think that 6.7 that you're seeing from IMDb fits right in the middle of that 87 and 56, and that's where I'd put it too. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It was interesting, and like I said, it's actually a good take on male female dynamics, and I think the title comes from the term "turnabout is fair play," right? Because it does get turned on its ear real quick. At least in the beginning, he never acts like he's superior. Like he gets the job and he's excited and he wants to take care of her, and she's happy about it. Like she's fully accepting of it. Like she told him he's getting the promotion because she thought he was, and she was excited for him. They love each other, and it's healthy. And then it's not as it goes on. So I mean, I would say give it a watch. It's a quick one. It's less than 2 hours. It's only an hour and 53 minutes. So you can get through it pretty quick if you're curious about it. No, no huge names you're going to see in there, nothing like that. But it's solid. The acting is good. And if you do watch it, I'd be curious what your takeaway is from the end. It kind of ends not quite on that like Sopranos go to black, but it definitely ends in a spot where it leaves a little to the imagination at the end. So I'm curious if you watched it, if you like that. Down to my last two. We're almost done here in the absolute marathon of movies that I've watched in 2 weeks. So the next thing I got to was The Boogeyman, and it's based on a Stephen King short story, and it's a boogeyman. So the boogeyman feeds on the fear of, or the sadness of people, and starts to come after them so it can eat their soul, is the gist of it. And so we have this character that in the beginning we see, basically his child gets killed. And then I think one of his other kids gets killed, and he's blaming us, or he's being blamed for it. He, effectively goes to this therapist who's also going through something. His wife just died in a car accident, so his family is sad. So when this dude comes to see the therapist, he kind of brings this evil into that house, and so now the boogeyman is looking at this new family. And it's a little predictable. The ratings are 60 and 66%, so it sits right in there, and Rotten Tomatoes on that, on the fresh side rather than the rotten side, but just barely. And I don't think that's wrong. I think there's nothing novel about it. There's nothing new and exciting about it. It's certainly predictable in a lot of parts, but it's not a bad horror film. If you're into suspenseful horror and the monsters in the dark, I think they give away the monster in the dark a little too early. I think if it had been glowing eyes, or more of a shadow in the corner for longer, it would have been more intimidating. They give away the full creature look too early, although when it goes full nasty creature near the end, it definitely gets a little creepier than it is through most of the movie. But the monster itself isn't anything that we haven't seen before, I don't feel like, but it's good. I mean, all the acting performances are good. The young girls do a good job. Sophie Thatcher is really the kind of lead in this one. She's from Yellow Jackets, and I mean she's really good in it. She does a good job. She's the older sister dealing with all this stuff with their mom dying, and the stuff that she goes through with her teenage friends is rough, because it doesn't feel entirely unrealistic, although they could have been better. Like I don't know that the teenage interaction is quite realistic, but it's definitely not entirely unrealistic. Like kids are shitty, and so the things that she deals with there don't help. And then the younger daughter, when she's dealing with the boogeyman, of course nobody believes her because she's a kid, right? So you have that whole aspect of the story too, and again, it's a horror film, so it's relatively predictable, but it finishes in a good spot. So I would say go give it a shot. I think it's better than the 60% it got. It's a 5.9 on IMDb, so it's not rated great. I don't hate it. Kind of like a lot of the stuff that I watched that wasn't the older stuff. It was okay. As Above, So Below was better. I even think the old Stephen King stuff was arguably better, at least story wise, especially Storm of the Century. Quality wise and modern horror wise, this is better. It's newer and it's more, the effects are good. It doesn't work the same way something like The Thing was, because it is CGI and it's a monster, but they do a good job with it. It doesn't look bad. So I say give it a watch. And so now I'm almost done. So we're gonna wrap up here. But I want to finish on Totally Killer. And this is a new one. It's over on Amazon Prime. And it's interesting. It has a 6.7 on IMDb, but this one I actually don't agree with there. I definitely am closer to the Rotten Tomatoes score on this one. It's got an 85% from the critics, 83% from the audience, and I definitely put it up there. It was a lot of fun. It plays with a few things. So number one, it is your typical, in its own way, slasher film. You've got the girl, she opens up, Kiernan Shipka from Sabrina, I think it's just called Sabrina, not the Teenage Witch. She was the more recent Sabrina on the CW. She was on Mad Men, but she's really good in this. And her mom is Julie Benson from Modern Family. And so the whole thing is that when her mom was in high school in 1987, there was a string of murders. Three girls from this friend group were all murdered at 16. They were all stabbed 16 times. And so, like, Kiernan Shipka's character's family doesn't celebrate Halloween because they knew these girls and it really freaked them out and whatever. And then the killer comes after her mom now 30 years later. And then it starts to get really fun. And it for the record, this is a comedic slasher film. It's definitely more funny than something like Scream or something like that. There's a whole lot of humor in it, and it's really good humor. But when it starts to take off is after the mom is murdered. The girl gets chased by the killer, and she finds her friend. They set this up a little earlier, but her friend's working on a time machine at the science fair. And of course, somehow when Kieran Shipka's character gets there, the time machine works and sends her back to 1987, the day before or 2 days before the killings are supposed to happen. So she now has this opportunity to save these girls' lives, and if she catches the killer, save her mom's life because her mom was murdered. And it's just, I mean, it's so much fun to see this, this modern mentality of a 2000s, 2020s teenager versus an 80s teenager. And the 80s teenagers are very much the mean girls kind of girls, but like people will say something like, or like they call each other bitch or something like that. And she's like, you can't do that. You can't say that. You have to. So all of her modern sensibilities, the way that we're so PC now, and the way that we deal with things, and woke isn't the right word, but the way that we are, I don't know, we're more uptight than we were in 1987. We're more, I mean, in a lot of ways, we're more correct than we were in 1987. And it's funny to see her like try and correct people that aren't ready for that. And it's funny, it's almost like Scream meets Back to the Future, and they reference Back to the Future a lot. Like she tries to explain what she's going through the lens of Back to the Future, to anybody that she can explain it to, because that's the time travel reference that they would get. And it's just, I mean, it is fun. It is really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. I think She did a great job. Olivia Holt plays her teenage mom. So her mom as a teenager. And there's some hilarious interactions between them because she calls her mom a few times, even though it's obviously not her mom at the time, right? She's only 16. But Olivia Holt was on Cloak and Dagger on ABC Family back in the day when Marvel was still trying to do their TV shows. And Cloak and Dagger was actually great. I really enjoyed that. I don't know that everybody did, but I really liked Cloak and Dagger. But we're talking about Totally Killer, which again, I think is great. I think everybody did a great job. The teenagers were great. And the teenagers felt like teenagers. I know that Olivia Holt isn't. I'm not sure how old Kiernan Shipka is, but she's probably not actually a teenager anymore. But I mean, they feel like teenagers, and just the dialogue's a lot of fun. It's a really, really fun movie. So to finish out the week, I would say go watch Totally Killer on Prime. This is one that I actually really do recommend. It's so much fun. And I think sometimes you need that. And if you've got kids and you want to watch it with them, I don't think if they've ever seen Scream, like if they're old enough to see Scream, this is not as violent as that. There's no sex scenes that you really have to worry about or anything like that. So it is relatively kid friendly. The rating on it is R, and it's probably for language. They drop a lot of F-bombs in there, but it's good. It's fun. I really enjoyed it, and I think everybody would, especially this being the season, right? This is spooky season and horror movie season, so I would say go give it a watch. It's a whole lot of fun. And with that, I'm finally have run out of things that I have watched. It feels like that was like everything in the world to me. I'm sure this episode is like 10 minutes long, and it's way less than I thought it was. But if you stuck all the way through, I really appreciate it. Next week, Andrew should be back, so we'll definitely talk about Ahsoka. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I can get Jen on next week too. She and I are the only two that I know that have been watching a show on Apple TV Plus called Changeling, or The Changeling. It is a very interesting, artsy, deeper show. It is supposed to be a modern fairy tale. There's definitely parts of it that are almost a little too deep. Like you really have to dig in and think about it, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's not like mind-blowingly good. But at the same time, it's pretty good. Like the acting is really good and the story they're telling is interesting. They just did kind of one of those bottle episodes that was really, really thick and deep in metaphor, and it kind of messes with the timeline a little bit, so it raises some questions. So it was a weird episode. And the show overall is weird. Like if you're on Apple TV Plus and you've seen Shyamalan's show, I can't remember the name of it right now. Servant. If you've seen Servant, it's maybe that level of weird, maybe even a little more, but also makes a little less sense than Servant for what it's worth. But I like it. It's good. And like I said, the acting is really great. So we'll talk about that if I can ever get Jen back on here, because she, like I said, she's the only person I know that's watching it. And it certainly bears discussion if we're going to talk about it. So I don't want to recommend it yet or not without having that discussion. And then, like I said, Andrew will be back to talk about Ahsoka and anything else that he's watched in the 2 weeks. I still have a massive list of stuff that I want to watch. So we'll get into that stuff next week also. And so with that, thank you for watching. If I've put up the audio, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.